one crane. The world that no longer exists. Long before modern history, at the top of this forgotten food chain lived a predator built to survive. And beneath them, vast herds shaped the land with every step they took. But the first threat was not a predator. It was a changing environment.
As the forest retreated, the animals lost shelter, food, and the space they needed to survive. A world once connected began breaking into isolated islands of survival. The herd moved farther than ever, searching for the world it had already lost. One valley remained alive, but it could no longer support the world that once surrounded it.
When water became limited, survival began turning every drink into a competition.
For the last predator, every failed hunt brought the entire species closer to silence.
Even when the rain returned, the old balance could not return with it.
When one part of the ecosystem weakened, every other part began to collapse.
For one final evening, the survivors gathered beneath a fading sky.
When safe places to raise young disappeared, the future of the species disappeared with them. Even survival itself became harder when food, water, and shelter could no longer support new life.
For generations, the herd followed the same path, but the world along that path had changed.
The survivors were no longer one population. They had become a fragile island of life.
Even the smallest survivors felt the disappearance of the giants above them.
Sometimes extinction begins quietly, with fewer calls, fewer tracks, and fewer signs of life. Even the final cougar still hunted, but the herd of bighorn sheep had learned to survive together. Her territory once stretched for miles, but now only fragments remain. With their homeland disappearing, the survivors began one final journey into the unknown. They were leaving the last world they knew, and history would never see that world again. Behind them remained the valley, that had once supported an entire living world. Every step forward carried them farther from the world their ancestors had known. The new land offered survival, but it was never truly their home. Stripped of its familiar landmarks, a new river appeared before them, but every new resource brought a new danger. For the young, every obstacle became a test that older generations once knew how to avoid. Every landscape carried evidence of animals that had vanished before the survivors arrived. Long before these survivors, other animals had already disappeared into the record of the Earth. The Earth remembers every species, but memory cannot bring a vanished animal back. The old hunting ground was gone, but instinct still guided the final hunter. Once again, the distance between survival and extinction came down to a single failed hunt. Every new habitat carried dangers the herd had never evolved to understand. They must move carefully here. A sudden landslide forced the herd to change direction. Character B, the male horse, immediately guides them toward a defining moment for the herd. The decision to split, driven by the dominant male, highlights the harsh realities of fragmentation and survival. When populations shrink, even finding another member of your own species becomes difficult. Another season arrived, but the world had fewer resources than ever before. Even shelter had become a resource the survivors could no longer take for granted. Landscape connectivity determines wildlife survival. Only one path remained open, and the survival of the herd depended on it. With nowhere else to go, the survivors were forced back into a shrinking world. The predator marked what remained, but its ancient territory was almost gone. Even the trails passed down through generations were slowly erased by the changing land. The cougar still watched, but even the final hunt now carried enormous risk. That night, only a few African elephants remained beneath the sky of a dying world. The final migration began, carrying the last survivors beyond the world we had known. And when the final herd disappeared, an entire ecosystem disappeared with it. Even the final footprints were slowly erased by wind, weather, and time. Without the herds, the land itself began changing in ways no animal could control. These are the paths of the great herbivores. But when the giants vanished, the entire balance of the ecosystem changed. Without the animals that once shaped the landscape began creating a new balance. Millions of years later, only traces would reveal that these animals had ever existed. From bones, footprints, and ancient landscapes, scientists can rebuild fragments of a lost life. Extinction does not remove one animal. It removes an entire relationship between life and the land. Their story survives because remembering the past can change what happens next. The last wild animals of a lost world leave us one lesson. Survival depends on the world around us. The last wild animals of a lost world are gone, but their warning is still alive.